Once upon a time, there lived a beautiful young woman called Araba. She lived in a small town with her husband and their 6-month-old baby. One afternoon, as she prepared some lunch for her household, she realized that she had run out of water, so she quickly grabbed her pot and rushed to fetch some water from the riverside. Her baby was sleeping peacefully, so she left her in the room in order not to wake her. On her return, she heard the horrifying news. Her house was on fire and her 6-month-old baby was trapped inside. Without a second thought, she dropped the pot and ran toward her burning home. Her neighbors had already gathered outside, staring helplessly at the blaze. They could hear the cries of a baby trapped inside, but the fire was too fierce for anyone to get close. Onlookers stood frozen in fear and had horror written all over their faces. They were unable to look away, but at the same time, unable to watch. When Auntie Araba arrived, she found a crowd gathered around her burning home. Some of her neighbors tried to put out the fire, but it was clear they were losing the battle. Fear gripped her as she heard the faint cry of her baby, and she knew she had to save her child, no matter what it took. She made a move to run into the house, but she was restrained and warned that it was too dangerous and she wouldn't survive the flames. However, Araba couldn't think of anything but the safety of her baby, whose cries grew weaker with every second. By the strength that only a mother's love could provide, Auntie Araba broke free from the women's grip. She pushed them aside, determined to reach her child. Without hesitation, she ran into the burning house. The heat was overwhelming and the smoke hurt her eyes, but she kept going, focused only on saving her baby. She could feel the fire burning her skin, but she pressed on, driven by pure determination. She managed to reach the room where her baby lay and found him coughing and choking from the thick smoke. She removed the wrapper around her waist, quickly wrapped her baby in it, and made her way back through the collapsing hut. Outside, the crowd watched in silence, thinking all hope was lost. But then, through the thick smoke and flames, they saw a figure emerge. It was Araba, carrying her baby in her arms. Both were covered in soot and their clothes were burned, but they were alive. The crowd could not believe their eyes. Auntie Araba's face was badly burned, but she had done the unthinkable. She had saved her child. As soon as she stepped out of the fire, Auntie Araba collapsed to the ground, still holding on to her baby. Her injuries were severe and she was rushed to the hospital where doctors worked tirelessly to treat her burns. But her baby, miraculously, had only minor burns and soon recovered. Araba had risked everything for her child, and in that moment, she became a hero in the eyes of all who witnessed her bravery. After the fire incident, Auntie Araba's life changed completely. Her face was scarred beyond recognition, a permanent reminder of the sacrifice she had made for her son. The pain of her injuries was nothing compared to how badly her husband Yaw treated her. He was away on a trip when the incident happened, and on his return, he couldn't believe that this was the same woman he had married. His once beautiful wife, now scarred beyond recognition. Instead of appreciating her bravery, he blamed her for what happened, accusing her of being careless and leaving their baby alone. Overcome with anger and disappointment, Yaw began to distance himself from Araba. Days turned into weeks, and Yaw's behavior grew colder. He no longer looked at Araba with love. Instead, he avoided her and barely spoke with her unless absolutely necessary. The sight of her scarred face filled him with disgust, and he started staying out late, finding excuses to be away from home. Eventually, he couldn't take it anymore. One day, without any warning, Yaw packed his bags and left. He abandoned Araba and their baby, unable to cope with what had happened. Araba was heartbroken. The man she had loved and built a life with had walked away from her, leaving her to fend for their baby all by herself. She felt lonely and rejected, but she knew she had to stay strong for her son, Kwame. No matter how much pain she was in, she was determined to give him a good life. Every time Araba went out, people stared at her with horrified looks and quickly turned away to avoid eye contact. Children cried in fear and ran away from her. The villagers whispered behind her back, making her feel like an outcast. But Araba refused to let their reactions break her spirit. She focused on raising Kwame, pouring all her love and energy into him. Araba took up work as a seamstress, sewing clothes for the villagers. It wasn't easy, but she worked hard to make ends meet and saved every penny she could, determined to provide for Kwame's future. Despite her struggles, Araba made sure Kwame had everything he needed and enrolled him in school. As the years passed, Kwame excelled in his studies. He won a scholarship to a prestigious boarding school in the city, and Araba couldn't have been prouder. But with this opportunity came new challenges. The scholarship covered the school fees, but there were many other expenses, books, uniforms, and groceries that Araba couldn't afford. Still, she was determined to give Kwame the best chance at success, and she took on extra sewing jobs. She even sold some of her belongings to make sure Kwame could go to school. Araba's sacrifices were great, but she never complained. She knew that everything she did was for her son Kwame. Her love for him was stronger than any pain or hardship she faced. All she wanted was for him to have a better life than she had and to rise above the difficulties they had endured. Kwame's new school was a renowned secondary school known for educating children of the rich and powerful in society. Almost everyone important in the country had attended that school, so Kwame felt proud to be there at first. But soon he noticed how different his life was from that of his schoolmates. They all came from rich families, wore expensive clothes, and talked about their big houses and fancy cars. Kwame started to feel embarrassed about his own humble background, and especially about his mother, Araba. One day, Araba went to see Kwame at the boarding school during visiting hours. She had brought him some homemade food, excited to see her son after several weeks. But when she arrived at the school, Kwame refused to meet her and kept her waiting for hours. Heartbroken, Auntie Araba had no choice but to return home without seeing her son. From then on, every time Araba visited, Kwame pretended not to know her. He would tell his friends that she was just a maid, trying to hide the truth about his mother. Despite this, Kwame remained focused on his studies and continued to excel. He topped his class and won several awards during the school speech and prize-giving day. Other parents were curious about the kind of family Kwame came from, wondering who his parents were to have raised such a brilliant child. But Kwame didn't even tell his mother about the event. She only heard about it later from Kwame's primary school teacher. Araba was deeply worried by Kwame's behavior. She hoped it was just a phase, something that would pass with time. But as Kwame grew older, his behavior worsened. He became more distant and easily irritated with his mother. Whenever he came home, he would snap at her over small things, making her feel even more isolated and unloved. When Kwame graduated from university with a degree in petroleum engineering, he was again at the top of his class and swept lots of awards. On the day of his graduation, Araba was filled with mixed emotions. She was proud of her son's achievements, but also deeply saddened that he continued to deny her. Kwame didn't invite her to the ceremony, and she had to hide far away just to catch a glimpse of the occasion. As she watched her son from a distance, tears rolled down her cheeks, her heart breaking silently. Despite her pain, Araba continued to work hard as a seamstress in their small town. She knew that Kwame's success was partly due to the sacrifices she had made, but she also knew that her son had drifted too far from her. The gap between them seemed impossible to bridge, and Araba feared that she had lost her son forever. After graduating, Kwame secured a job with a big petroleum company in the city, and in no time he bought a house in a prime location. Meanwhile, Auntie Araba continued her work as a seamstress in their small town, living a simple and quiet life. One day, she decided to pay Kwame a visit, hoping to see how he was doing and perhaps reconnect with him. The journey to the city was long and tiring, but Auntie Araba was determined. After traveling several miles, she finally reached Kwame's new home. It was in a well-kept estate, surrounded by high walls and guarded by a security man at the gate. Auntie Araba knocked on the gate, and when the security man came out, she told him she was there to see her son, Kwame. The security man looked at her doubtfully and asked her to wait while he went to inform his boss. When the security man told Kwame that a strange-looking woman was at the gate claiming to be his mother, Kwame coldly responded, "My mother died a long time ago. The woman at the gate cannot be my mother." The security man returned to Auntie Araba with the heartbreaking message. Stunned and confused, Auntie Araba couldn't believe what she had just heard. She wondered where she had gone wrong in raising Kwame for him to treat her this way. All the memories of the sacrifices she had made for him flashed through her mind, saving him from the fire that scarred her face, working tirelessly to provide for him and enduring his rejection over the years. Tears streamed down her face as she slowly walked away from the gate. The long journey back home felt even longer as she was weighed down by the pain of her son's betrayal. Despite everything she had done for him, Kwame had completely turned his back on her. Back in the city, Kwame continued to excel in his career. He quickly became a key player at the petroleum company, impressing everyone with his intelligence and hard work. He met a beautiful woman named Dora, and they fell in love. They soon got married, and Kwame, still ashamed of his background, went as far as hiring people to pose as his parents during the wedding. Auntie Araba, the woman who had given everything for him, was not even invited. Years later, the position of director at Kwame's company became vacant. It was a highly coveted role, and Kwame, along with several colleagues, lobbied hard for the promotion. To secure the job, each candidate had to prove they were the best fit by showcasing successful projects they had led within the company. Kwame had recently led a team that discovered a large oil field in a village near his hometown. The discovery was the biggest yet in the country, and Kwame knew that successfully negotiating with the local community to start drilling would be a major boost to his career. However, the people in the village were worried that the drilling would destroy their land and way of life. Tensions were high, and the village youth were causing trouble for the company by refusing to allow the project to begin. Kwame was tasked with convincing the villagers that the drilling would be done ethically and that it would benefit the community. He promised them better water supply, a share of the profits for local development, new schools, and jobs for the youth. But despite his assurances, the villagers were not convinced. They didn't trust him or the company. In a desperate move, Kwame decided to appeal to the villagers by revealing his roots. He thought that if they saw him as one of their own, they might be more willing to listen. During a meeting with the village elders, Kwame spoke in their local dialect and introduced himself as a son of the land. But the elders were skeptical. They asked him, "Who are your parents? We know all the prominent young men from this town because they have always returned home and contributed to the development of this community. We have never seen or heard of you." Feeling cornered, Kwame nervously mentioned his mother's name. "I am Auntie Araba's son," he said. The elders exchanged puzzled looks and asked him to describe her further. "There are so many Auntie Arabas in this town, so you need to give us a vivid description." With a shaky voice, Kwame responded, "My elders, I am from the Kumsan family, and my mother is Auntie Araba, the woman with the scarred face." The elders couldn't believe that Auntie Araba, a woman who had lived in poverty and isolation, had a son who was now a successful man. Kwame's colleagues were equally shocked. They had no idea that the man who had presented himself so grandly came from such humble background. They had met someone else at his wedding, not the scarred woman Kwame now claimed as his mother. The elders summoned Auntie Araba to confirm Kwame's story. She arrived, looking tired and worn, her appearance reflecting years of hard work and hardship. When she saw Kwame, she was both surprised and heartbroken. The elders asked her to speak, and she began to recount her life story. "My elders," she started, "you all know what happened to me many years ago. My life changed completely when I ran into a burning house to save my only child. I was badly scarred, and my husband abandoned me because of my appearance. I became popular within this town and the nearby villages and referred to as the horror woman, but I didn't give up. I worked day and night to ensure that my son, Kwame, lacked nothing and got the best education. But what did I gain in return? Rejection." Auntie Araba's voice broke with emotion as she continued. "Kwame, the pain of your betrayal is worse than the burns I suffered in the fire. It's worse than the pain I felt bringing you into this world. This man here, who claims to be my son, has denied me severally. He even wished I were dead and replaced me with someone else at his wedding. My elders, it's true that I birthed him, but I no longer consider him my child because I lost my son a long time ago. Therefore, I cannot vouch for him as a son of this land." With tears running down her face, she stood up and left the elders. Kwame's work colleagues, and even Kwame himself, were overwhelmed with emotion by Auntie Araba's words. Kwame realized too late the depth of the pain he had caused his mother. The elders decided they could not trust Kwame or his promises. They refused to negotiate with him, believing that if he could treat his own mother so cruelly, he would do worse to strangers. Word of the incident spread quickly at work, and Kwame's colleagues began to see him in a different light, questioning his integrity. The company removed him from the project, and with that, he lost his chance at the big promotion. When Dora, Kwame's wife, heard what had happened, she was deeply disappointed. Her own mother had died giving birth to her, so she knew the pain of growing up without a mother's love. She couldn't understand why Kwame had hidden the truth from her and rejected the woman who had sacrificed everything for him. Heartbroken, Dora packed her things and left, taking their children with her. In desperation, Dora traveled to the Kwame's hometown to look for Auntie Araba. She assured Auntie Araba that she had no idea what Kwame had done and pleaded with her to forgive them. Dora invited Auntie Araba to come live with her and the children in the city, promising to take good care of her. At first, Auntie Araba declined, but seeing the sincerity in Dora's eyes, she finally agreed. Together, they returned to the city, where Auntie Araba could at last enjoy the company of her grandchildren and experience the love and respect she deserved. Kwame, now utterly broken and consumed by regret, looked for his mother and wife, falling to his knees before them. His voice trembled as he begged for forgiveness, with tears streaming down his face. But the wounds he had inflicted were too deep to be healed by mere words. Auntie Araba's heart, hardened by years of rejection, looked at her son with sorrowful eyes, but she could not bring herself to forgive him. The pain he had caused her was too profound, too enduring. Dora, though deeply saddened by the sight of her husband in such a state, could not forget the hurt he had brought upon their family. Her disappointment ran deep, and she knew that the trust they once shared could never be restored. Holding their children close, she turned away, leaving Kwame alone with his guilt and sorrow. As Kwame watched them walk away, a wave of despair washed over him. He realized, too late, that he had lost everything that truly mattered: his family. The emptiness in his heart was a constant reminder of the life he had ruined with his own hands. As the story of Kwame and Auntie Araba comes to a close, we are left with a powerful reminder. Love, respect, and gratitude for those who sacrifice for us, especially our parents, are invaluable. Kwame's downfall was not because of a lack of success, but because he forgot where he came from, denying the one person who gave everything for him. As the saying goes, the child who does not appreciate the mother's back will soon be carried by the ground. But now, I leave you with a question. Do you think Kwame deserved forgiveness after everything he had done? Could you forgive someone who caused so much pain? If you were in Auntie Araba's shoes, would you have risked your life by running into that burning house? What do you think motivated her, and how do you think she felt knowing her face would never be the same? And finally, do you think Kwame was ashamed of his mother because of her looks or because of their situation? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this story, please like, subscribe, and share to help our channel grow. We appreciate your support and look forward to sharing more stories with you.